Stay tuned. Ahead, I'll talk with Peter Flax about Live to Ride, finding joy and meaning on a bicycle. The book celebrates the many reasons people are passionate about bike riding, including speed and adventure, spending time in nature, and for self-expression. Bike riding does all that and more. Hi, I'm Dan Skinner, and this is Some Books Considered. Peter Flax is a Los Angeles-based writer and editor who has covered sports, adventure, and culture for over 30 years. A lifelong cyclist, Flax has written about bike culture with a focus on advocacy, racing, and the beauty of the lifestyle for decades. And you can learn more about him in the description below. Peter, welcome to Some Books Considered.
Thanks. Great to be here.
Well, in the introduction to the book, you talk about bike culture and, in fact, that it's divided sometimes up into tribes, and that over time your feelings about that bike culture have changed. Tell us a bit about that.
Yeah, it's a great question. I think historically, a lot of people who ride have just felt rather than being a part of this big tent, belong to this smaller group. They think like I'm a mountain biker, or I'm a bike commuter, or I'm a fitness enthusiast, or a racer, and that, you know, depending on what kind of bike they sit on and what clothes they wear, they have felt like they were in this subgroup. And what I've seen in the last 10 years, really picking up speed lately, is like these signs of unification, that people realizing that they have way more in common with other riders than they previously thought, and that there's like strength in the culture to be had by everyone feeling connected.
And as you also note in the introduction, this book is really about that. It's about what ties all bikers together. So we won't have time to talk about everything in the book, but give us a quick overview of what readers are going to find here.
I started writing the book early in the pandemic when there was the biggest boom in riding since the 70s. And I started just thinking, like, why is it that everybody rides? And where I settled was to have each chapter be about an idea that nearly everyone who rides cares about. So it's like this search for adventure, this desire to be close to nature, this form of self-expression, and so on. And with this idea of, like, even if people didn't see that unification, that they'd read and they go, oh yeah, like I love riding in the park or by the ocean, and I remember what it's like to discover a new neighborhood when I was a kid, and I still feel that way now that I'm an adult, and that so I hope the book is, like, in some small way, opening people's eyes to how much we all have in common if we ride.
Yeah, you say, I think I'm going to get this paraphrasing it wrong, but basically, if you ride a bike, you're doing okay. That's the right way to do it. And we shouldn't be thinking about all these different subcategories.
Yeah, so the exact wording is, if you're riding a bike, you're doing it right. So you were very close to perfect there. And I do think that, bike culture has often had these like threads of elitism running through it, where this feeling of like, oh, there's, it's like an onion where you have to peel back the layers to really become like a black belt in riding. And I think the feeling now is changing, of being way more inclusive, where people realize that if you love to ride, in whatever kind of riding you do, that you're welcome, and that the culture is going to embrace you. And that's like a critical part of self-expression, is like you get to be who you want to be on a bike, and feel like the culture is going to accept you for how you are.
In the book, in each of those sections, you profile people who exemplify that attribute. So tell us about some of the people that you feature in the book.
Well, I'm the former editor-in-chief of Bicycling magazine, and so I've been in this space for a long time, and I really tried to pick people who demonstrated just how broad our culture is. There's a couple of Black bike racers who've brought the sport to a new demographic. There's an advocate who's really done a wonderful job speaking out for heavy riders and making people with any kind of body feel welcome. There are Greg LeMond, probably the most famous American bike racer of all time, is in there. There's Gary Fisher, one of the co-inventors of the mountain bike. There's women who've like radically brought inclusion to those spaces. Really just try to show people how it reflects the broader culture that we're a part of like wanting everyone to feel welcome.
And I should note that in addition to these wonderful stories, there's lots of great photographs in this book. What can you tell us about those?
Yeah, so there are three photographers. There's a husband and wife team named Ashley and Jerry Gruber and John Watson, who shot most of the photography. They're like beloved in the cycling space, and I'm really happy that they're part of the book. I think it's like kind of a small coffee table book, but I think that the visuals are really important for people to just see the beauty of riding. Like I want you to read the book and then want to put it down and go out for a bike ride.
Bike riding has been part of your life forever, basically. So what is it about bike riding that speaks to you?
Well, I think because I've been riding so long and the different kinds of riding I've done are so varied that over time I've come to just feel like it fills so many important needs for me. It's like, sure, it's exercise. It's a way for me to get to work. It's a way for me to unplug and explore where I live. It is a way for me to drive as little as possible. For a lot of people, they're really in the modern era, like struggling to find time for themselves, to find a little bit of adventure in their lives. And so all those things are meaningful to me, where I think, probably that, people that are really into yoga or get really into gardening, there's other ways to get those kinds of feelings, but it becomes like a lifestyle that is broader than people who are just starting might foresee.
I'm talking with Peter Flax about Live to Ride, finding joy and meaning on a bicycle. And our conversation continues in a moment. If you're enjoying this discussion, please subscribe, like, and click on the bell so you'll know when I post new interviews. And thank you. One of the things you point out in the book is from the very invention of the bicycle, there's been this sort of tension between people who are really enthusiastic and passionate about bicycling and those who don't get it and basically make it more difficult for a person to be a bicyclist.
Yeah, I mean, since the precursor of the bicycle was invented, there has been pushback. Riders behave a little different when they're on the street, and that now in the modern cities where there's traffic, a lot of people look at bike riders as competition for valuable paved space, and so there is this like underlying historical tension, but I do think that that's something that also unifies everyone who rides. And that like as a unified group, there's the strength in numbers, that the more people that are out on the streets, the safer it will be for everyone. And so like just as an example, like the development of e-bikes, which bring a whole new demographic to experience riding on the street, is just a net positive, because it's more people who realize, if there was a bike lane heading to downtown, that would make my life easier. It has all these repercussive benefits, the more people who ride.
Since you brought it up, let's talk a little bit about e-bikes, because there's a certain amount of controversy, depending on who you talk to, surrounding those bicycles. Yeah,
I mean, I think in sort of traditional recreational riding culture, I've heard a lot of people say, riding an e-bike is cheating, which is got to be one of the dumber things I've ever heard bike people say, given that, the alternative for a lot of people would be like getting a loan in a 5,000-pound motor vehicle. And so as a way to run errands, they're great. As mountain biking has never been particularly egalitarian. So the idea that more people can experience what it's like to ride a bike to the top of a mountain is just a positive. It's like it should not be reserved to just young and super fit people. So but I think self-driving cars are similar. That whenever you introduce new forms of transportation, there's some anxiety around that, and some regulatory things that need to be worked out. But I think over time, people will realize that it's just another way of riding a bike, and they're super fun.
And there's some technology bugs, at least early on, that needed to be worked out. There have been, it's not representative, obviously, of all of e-bikes, but there have been isolated instances of batteries catching on fire and that sort of thing, which does not happen with your regular bicycle.
No, that's true, but I think still about half the e-bikes sold in North America don't conform with regulatory guidance. That like you can go on Amazon and buy these bikes direct from Asian manufacturers, and almost all of the battery problems you're referencing come from those bikes rather than the bikes you would buy at a regular local bike shop, and so they are slowly trying to iron out the regulatory issues so that these safety problems are minimized.
I want to talk a little bit about bicycling as a whole. As if we see more bicycling happening around the world, what sort of impact do you think that has on many issues that we face?
I mean, I think there are so many systematic problems where riding can be part of the solution, right? Like there's problems with public health and obesity. There's concerns about climate change. There's economic concerns about the price of fuel and car insurance. There's people, in this digital age that have trouble unplugging. Their traffic is horrible. For all those problems, riding a bike can be an answer. It doesn't, and it may not be the answer for everyone, and I think that's fine. It's like never something I've advocated that it's like bike riding is the solution for everyone. It doesn't have to be that if 10% of the public does a lot of their local transport on a bike, then it changes life for the better for the other 90%, because that's like a lot less cars on the road. And so I do think it has the power to transform our culture, much like it already has in Europe.
Well, Peter, as we pointed out, sometimes there are obstacles to enjoying that bike ride because sometimes cities aren't equipped for it. Depends on the city. Sometimes it can be great, sometimes not. What are your thoughts about bicycle safety and what can be done to make riding a bicycle, particularly in the city, safer?
There's always this duality to that question where I think elementally there's like riding a bike is not dangerous. And so the data is pretty strong that riding a bike is not more dangerous than being in a motor vehicle, but yet there's like this vulnerability to it. And when something goes wrong, and you're on a bike, then you're going to lose that interaction. And so I think safety is just on everyone's mind. I think infrastructure is really obvious solution of giving riders like safe places to ride. And a lot of cities are realizing that just putting paint down on the road is like a half measure, and that making protected lanes where you're actually in a spot where someone driving can't possibly hit you is a lot safer. And that in a lot of North American cities, they have data that when you make those kind of protected lanes, that more beginners ride, more families ride, more women ride, that people spend more money in local stores. It's all these positive things that happen. And I think that people like love to tell riders what they can do to be safer. And I think as a rider, I'm always happy to talk to other riders about like skills and equipment. But I think, when you look at other parts of the world where riders have much lower rates of injury, The only difference is just that they have better infrastructure and drivers are better educated. It's like your helmet is like a relatively minor factor in the safety issue.
I want to talk to you a little bit more about the content of the book, especially at the end of the book. You have some beautiful bicycles that you profile and about how bicycles have been introduced in sort of a fashion sense, etc. Tell us a bit about that content.
Yeah, I mean, I think part of the self-expression idea is like that each individual can, by the bike they pick or what they wear or even how they ride, express something about themselves. And I think, if you just look at fashion, people do that in their regular lives all the time, or when you go to play golf, that you make choices on what you're wearing. And that's like, but in bike riding culture, there are now just so many options. You can get a bike that's made by a hand-built, a bike built just for you. You can wear almost anything. Like fashion is like infiltrated bike culture, and so whether you want to look like a really colorful racer or want to look more urban or ride in jeans that are comfortable when you ride, the options are enormous now. And so I think people feel like a piece of their personality can come through when they're riding. And if you're like me, spend so many hours a week on the bike, that's great.
Yeah, Peter, as you noted, there are other countries that have embraced bicycling much more than here in the United States. But what's your hope for the future of bicycling in the U.S.?
I just want it to be safer and more widely accepted. I think I said, I'm an evangelist, but it's not like I would say to, like, if I meet someone at a dinner party and they're like, my knees hurt, I don't like to ride. It's like, okay, that's, we're not trying, we don't need to, it's not a cult and we don't need everyone to join, but that, it should be the easiest, like for things that are like 3 or 4 miles away or closer, it's better than driving. It is. It's like like when I go to the supermarket, I have like VIP valet parking. I roll right up to the front door and lock my bike and walk in. It's just such a beautiful and effective way to get around, and that we're at a point where we're worried about climate change. Gas eats into our savings. Traffic is horrible. It's like for so many problems, riding can be a solution. And so I just want it to be fun and accessible and safe for everyone. And I think it'll take longer than I want it to, but it will happen. Like in my life, I think you'll go to big American cities and see like 5x the kind of riding you're seeing now. And that'll just make me so happy.
Well, to learn more, the book is Live to Ride, Finding Joy and Meaning on a Bicycle by Peter Flax. Peter, thank you for talking with me today.
It was a great conversation. I appreciate you.
If you'd like to purchase Live to Ride, I've placed a link for you in the description below. And if you'd like to see more videos about books and their authors and a wide variety of topics, be sure to subscribe, like, and click on the bell to be notified about future programs. I'm Dan Skinner. Thank you for watching this edition of Some Books Considered.